This story is titled, My Golden Sibling Brother Got on One Knee and Offered My Girlfriend an Engagement Ring During Our Parents' Visit. So I knocked the ring from his hands and called him stupid. But my parents took his side, saying I shouldn't react so harshly. Hey Reddit, my name is Marcus, and I'm 29 years old. I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but I need to get this off my chest before I lose my mind completely. Let me start with some background that's crucial to understanding just how insane this situation became. I grew up in Ohio as the oldest of 3 kids, and from early on, I learned that hard work was the only way I'd get anywhere. I worked my ass off through school and managed to get into Ohio State for computer engineering. After graduation, I landed a solid tech job in Cleveland and spent almost a decade building my career there. Then an opportunity came up that I couldn't pass up, a higher-paying remote position that let me move back to my hometown in Ohio about 2 years ago. The money was simply too good to refuse. A $40,000 salary bump plus stock options that are already worth another $25,000. Now let me tell you about my younger brother Tyler, who's 26 years old. Tyler has always been my mother's favorite, and she's never been subtle about it. She's absolutely blatant in her favoritism. While I had to work summer jobs just to afford my first car, Tyler got his handed to him as an 18th birthday present. When I needed help with college tuition, I got lectures about financial responsibility and the importance of earning your way. But when Tyler wanted to start a business, a food truck selling overpriced burgers that failed spectacularly within 9 months and cost my parents $75,000, they drained their savings to fund his dream without a second thought. This pattern was established early when we were kids. I'd get grounded for something as minor as leaving my bike out in the rain. But when Tyler crashed his bike into our neighbor's carefully maintained garden and destroyed $400 worth of exotic plants, my mom actually blamed the neighbor for planting too close to the sidewalk. I still remember watching her write that check with a martyred expression on her face, then taking Tyler out for ice cream afterward to cheer him up from the trauma of the whole ordeal. Don't get me wrong. I've built my own life and done well for myself despite all this. I'm now a senior network security engineer making good money. I own a nice condo, and I've managed to put most of the family bullshit behind me. Or at least I thought I had. My sister Lily is 24 years old, and thankfully, she gets it. She's a nurse who paid her own way through school and dealt with the same favoritism crap that I did. While Tyler was sleeping off parties in my parents' basement, Lily was working night shifts at a 24-hour diner throughout nursing school, coming home at 3 a.m. to study with textbooks spread across her kitchen table. She understood what it was like to actually work for everything you achieved. Lily and I have a standing monthly video call specifically to vent about family drama. These sessions usually end with us making bets on Tyler's next catastrophic life decision, and I have to admit, I've gotten pretty good at predicting his patterns. Last month, I won $60 when I correctly predicted that he'd try to become a day trader after watching a single YouTube video about it. Sure enough, he lost $2,800 in just 3 days before giving up on that particular venture. I also need to tell you about my best friend Connor, who's also 29 and has been in my corner since we were 12 years old. We met in middle school when he called out a teacher who gave me detention for something I didn't actually do. Connor had noticed that Tyler was the one throwing paper airplanes around the classroom, but when the teacher caught the disruption, Tyler blamed me instead. Connor stood up, pointed directly at Tyler and said, "It was that kid. Marcus is just covering for him because that's what he always does." Connor got detention too for speaking up, but we've been inseparable ever since that day. Connor has this razor-sharp sarcasm that cuts through bullshit faster than anything I've ever seen. He works as a mechanical engineer for a defense contractor and never hesitates to point out when someone's being an idiot, especially when it comes to my family dynamics. He's been telling me for years that I should stop trying to win my parents' approval, and honestly, I should have listened to him sooner than I did. Connor and I meet up for basketball every Wednesday morning, where we absolutely destroy college kids half our age through pure strategy and what he calls dirty tricks. He refers to our playing style as old man ball. Fewer jump shots, more strategic elbows and trash talk. The real competition, though, is our post-game debate about which of our families is more dysfunctional. His dad left when he was 9, and his mom cycled through boyfriends like seasonal wardrobes, so it's usually a pretty close contest between our respective family disasters. About a year after moving back to Ohio, I met Victoria at a local tech meetup downtown. She was 28 years old and presenting on digital marketing strategies for B2B clients. Right from the start, I could tell she was smart as hell and didn't take shit from anyone. She had this dry sense of humor that absolutely killed me. And during her presentation, she dropped 3 perfect Star Wars references that were so seamlessly integrated that I knew I had to introduce myself afterward. We hit it off immediately, and by 6 months in, things had gotten serious between us. Victoria grew up with 4 brothers in a household where directness was valued above politeness, so she knew how to handle herself in any situation. When she first met Connor, they spent 2 hours arguing about the technical feasibility of lightsabers, while I just sat back and watched in amusement. She's also got a black belt in jiu-jitsu, which she earned after some creep followed her home from college one night. Victoria is definitely not someone you want to mess with, which makes what happened later even more absolutely insane. I didn't mention Victoria to my family right away, mainly because, given our history, I've learned to keep my personal life separate from family stuff until I'm completely sure about things. By Christmas, though, I had decided it was time for them to meet her. I figured, what could possibly go wrong with a simple introduction? That's when everything completely imploded. I showed my parents some pictures of Victoria, and when Tyler saw her, he completely lost his mind. He started shouting about how I was a complete asshole for dating his ex-girlfriend. I had absolutely no clue they even knew each other, let alone that they had dated. Apparently, Tyler and Victoria had gone on a few casual dates about 3 months before I met her, and according to his version of events, it was some intense, meaningful relationship that she had ended abruptly and cruelly. Tyler pulled his classic move, dramatically stomping upstairs and slamming his bedroom door like he was 15 instead of 26. My mom immediately gave me that disappointed look she'd perfected over the years, the one that could make me feel guilty for existing. I asked Victoria about it later, and she told me the truth about what had actually happened between them. They had gone on exactly 3 dates, and she broke it off when Tyler started acting possessive after barely knowing her. On their 3rd date, he had suggested that she meet his parents and started talking about planning a weekend trip to Cleveland together. When she told him that things were moving way too fast, he showed up at her workplace the next day with flowers. That was the final straw for her, and she refused to see him again. I refused to end things with Victoria over this complete bullshit, but Tyler kept bringing it up for weeks afterward. He told everyone who would listen that I had stolen his girlfriend, conveniently leaving out the part about how brief and one-sided their relationship had actually been. My mom started making passive-aggressive comments about family loyalty whenever Victoria's name came up in conversation. Eventually, Tyler stopped mentioning it directly, and I thought we could all move on from the drama. I was completely and utterly wrong about that. Fast forward to this past summer. Victoria and I had been together for about 16 months at that point, and I knew without a doubt that she was the one I wanted to spend my life with. I planned an elaborate proposal for her birthday, renting a private room at her favorite restaurant and inviting both our families and close friends. I had spent 4 months' salary on the perfect ring, and when the moment came, the proposal went absolutely perfectly. She said yes, everyone cheered, and it was honestly one of the best nights of my entire life. Well, almost everyone cheered. Tyler stormed out during the applause, and my mother immediately followed him like he was a toddler having a tantrum. On her way out, she shot me a glare as if I had proposed specifically to ruin Tyler's evening and hurt his feelings. My dad just shrugged apologetically but stayed for the rest of the celebration, which I appreciated. Later that night, Connor pulled me aside with a look of complete disbelief on his face. "Your mom literally chased after a 26-year-old man who was throwing a fit about someone else getting engaged," he said. "Think about how absolutely insane that is." When he put it that way, the situation was both hilarious and deeply disturbing at the same time. Tyler was quiet for about 3 months after the engagement incident, barely speaking to me, which was honestly fine by me. I thought maybe he had finally gotten over his ridiculous tantrum, and we could all move forward. Then, completely out of nowhere, he invited Victoria and me to dinner at his place with my parents and sister. He said he wanted to clear the air before our wedding, and since my parents and Lily would be there as buffers, we decided to accept the invitation. Lily texted me beforehand asking, "Suspicious timing? Want me to bring my taser?" I thought she was just joking around, but it turns out we should have been even more prepared for what was coming. The dinner itself was tense but relatively uneventful. My mom kept asking Victoria pointed questions about her family background and career goals, with the subtle implication that marketing wasn't a serious profession like Tyler's perpetual entrepreneurship ventures. Victoria handled it like an absolute professional, even managing to compliment my mom on her hideous new haircut with a completely straight face. I was honestly impressed by her restraint. Afterward, we all moved to the living room for coffee, and what I assumed would be polite small talk before we could make our escape. About half an hour into the conversation, Tyler suddenly stood up and announced that he had an important announcement to make. He launched into this long, dramatic speech about how happy he was to have everyone there for his special moment, and how meaningful this gathering was to him. Then, and I still can't believe this actually happened, he got down on one knee, pulled out a ring box, and proposed to my fiancée. My fiancée. The woman I had proposed to just 3 months earlier, who was wearing my engagement ring on her finger as he did this. The room went completely dead silent. Victoria looked absolutely horrified and immediately told him to put the ring away and get up off the floor. My dad tried to step in and defuse the situation, but I was already across the room. I grabbed Tyler by his shirt collar and punched him square in the jaw. He fell backward, knocking over the coffee table and sending everything crashing to the floor, before my dad managed to pull me off of him. Tyler started spewing some completely delusional bullshit about how Victoria was only with me to get back at him for dumping her, and that this whole proposal stunt somehow proved that she didn't really love me. My mom was screaming at me for hitting her precious boy, completely ignoring what he had just done that led to me punching him in the first place. Lily managed to get Victoria and me out of there before things escalated even further, which was probably the smart move considering how furious I was. In the car afterward, Victoria was absolutely livid. She couldn't believe that Tyler would pull something like that, especially in front of both our families during what was supposed to be a peacemaking dinner. When we got home, I checked the damage to my hand. Nothing was broken, just some bruised knuckles, while Victoria paced around the kitchen trying to process what had just happened. "I went on 3 dates with him, Marcus," she kept saying. 3 dates, and he does this a year and a half later. Who the hell does something like that? I didn't have an answer for her because logic simply doesn't apply in Tyler's world. It's been a week since that disaster, and I'm still absolutely seeing red about the whole situation. My parents have been blowing up my phone, mostly defending Tyler and insisting that I completely overreacted to the situation. My mom even had the audacity to suggest that I should apologize to him for punching him. "He's sensitive and was just expressing his feelings," she texted me. Violence is never the answer. I texted back, "Neither is proposing to your brother's fiancée." Finally, I decided to confront Tyler directly and get to the bottom of his insane behavior. I called him and insisted that Victoria be present for the conversation so there would be no misunderstandings or twisted versions of what was said. He surprisingly agreed to meet, which caught me off guard. We met at my place the following weekend. When Tyler arrived, he looked like absolute shit. Unshaven, bloodshot eyes, the works. He sat silently for a few minutes before I finally broke the ice by asking him to explain himself and his actions. "Look, it's not what you think," he started, which immediately set off alarm bells in my head. "I was trying to prove a point." "What point could possibly justify proposing to my fiancée?" I demanded. He explained that he'd been talking to his buddy Blake about Victoria and me, and Blake had put it in his head that Victoria only started dating me as revenge for Tyler rejecting her. They had apparently cooked up this brilliant test to see if she would leave me for Tyler when given the chance. If you're wondering who Blake is, he's Tyler's equally delusional friend from college. The same guy who convinced Tyler that cryptocurrency was a guaranteed investment right before the market crashed. He's also the marketing expert who designed the logo for Tyler's failed food truck, which was a cartoon burger that looked disturbingly anatomical. Their combined IQ barely reaches room temperature on a good day. Blake said if she was using you to get back at me, she'd either say yes to my proposal or at least be flattered by it, Tyler explained with completely straight face. The fact that she was disgusted proved that she might actually love you. Victoria was absolutely livid at this explanation. "So you humiliated all of us to prove a point? You realize how completely insane that is, right?" Tyler just shrugged like it was no big deal. "I had to know for sure," Blake said. "Blake is a 27-year-old who lives in his mom's basement," I interrupted. "Maybe don't take relationship advice from him." The conversation went downhill from there. Tyler maintained that he was completely justified in his actions because of bros before hoes, his actual words, and said that if the situation were reversed, he would have respected the code and backed off. I knew that was complete bullshit, considering Tyler had never respected any kind of boundaries in his entire life. Before leaving, Tyler declared that he wouldn't be attending our wedding. "I can't support this marriage knowing I had her first," he announced dramatically. 3 dates isn't having someone first, you idiot, I told him. And don't worry, your invitation was already in the shredder. After he left, I called my parents to explain what had happened during our conversation. My dad seemed to understand the situation and how ridiculous Tyler's behavior had been. But my mom was still making excuses for him. She kept calling it a misunderstanding and suggesting that we were being too harsh on him. He's always been sensitive, she said, and he really liked Victoria. You should have checked with him before you started dating her. We went on 3 dates a year and a half ago, Victoria said loudly enough for my mom to hear over the phone. I barely knew him. My mom hung up after that. Lily called later to say she was fully on our side and thought Tyler's behavior was completely inexcusable. I've been saying it for years. Mom created a monster, she told me. Good luck getting her to see it, though. For the time being, I decided to go low contact with Tyler and my parents. Victoria and I focused on moving forward with our wedding planning, though the family drama was definitely casting a shadow over what should have been a happy time in our lives. That weekend, Connor came over with pizza and his PlayStation, declaring it a wedding planning break. He said I needed to shoot some virtual bad guys instead of my actual brother, and honestly, he wasn't wrong about that. About a month later, the situation exploded again at my sister Lily's promotion celebration dinner. My parents hosted it at their house, and Tyler was conveniently busy that evening, probably still nursing his wounded ego. Lily had recently been promoted to charge nurse in the emergency room, which was a huge achievement that she'd worked incredibly hard for. During dinner, Lily mentioned her upcoming trip to Europe, and then she casually said, Marcus, I know Tyler's uninvited from your wedding, but you'd be cool with him coming to my birthday party next month, right? I laughed it off and told her it was her party and her guest list, so she could invite whoever she wanted. My mom, who had been silently fuming all night long, suddenly snapped at this comment. Is Tyler really still uninvited to your wedding? I thought you were just being dramatic and would get over it by now. I confirmed that yes, he was still uninvited from our wedding. She started ranting about how I was being childish and holding grudges over nothing. I reminded her that Tyler and I had mutually agreed that he wouldn't attend. It wasn't just my decision. She then accused me of trying to divide the family and said I was jealous of Tyler's charisma. What charisma? I thought to myself. The guy wears graphic t-shirts with cryptocurrency slogans, hasn't had a real job since college, and his idea of witty conversation is quoting Joe Rogan podcasts. But in my mom's eyes, he's George Clooney and Elon Musk rolled into one perfect human being. I bit my tongue and told her this wasn't the time or place to discuss it. We were there to celebrate Lily's achievement. My mom stormed off to the kitchen in a huff, and the rest of the night was awkwardly silent. My dad tried to salvage the evening by asking Lily detailed questions about her new role and responsibilities, but the damage was already done. 3 days later, my mom showed up at my house completely unannounced. Victoria was working from home, and I had just gotten back from a meeting when my mom barged in without waiting for an invitation. She demanded that we settle this Tyler situation once and for all, right then and there. She launched into this bizarre lecture about how I should be secure enough in my relationship not to worry about Tyler's harmless prank. That's what she called the proposal. A harmless prank. She said that uninviting him from our wedding was cruel and petty, and that I needed to be the bigger person in this situation. I told her again that Tyler and I had both agreed that he shouldn't come to the wedding, and if she had an issue with it, she should talk to him about it, not me. This led to a full-blown shouting match where she finally dropped the bomb that she'd apparently been holding on to. If Tyler's not welcome at your wedding, then I'm not coming either, she declared. That's your choice, I replied as calmly as I could manage. I'm not going to beg you to be at my wedding. She looked absolutely shocked, like she had expected me to cave immediately and start apologizing. You would really be okay with your mother missing your wedding? It wouldn't be the first important event of mine you've missed because of Tyler, would it? I shot back. That comment hit home hard. She had skipped my college graduation because Tyler had a minor cold and needed someone to take care of him. She missed my first professional awards ceremony because it was the same night as Tyler's community theater performance, where he played tree number 3 and had absolutely no speaking lines. She called me cruel and heartless before storming out of the house. Within hours, my phone was blowing up with texts and calls from her side of the family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all telling me that I was being unreasonable and needed to respect my mother and make things right. My dad called privately later that evening with a very different perspective. Son, I think your mother is wrong on this one, he said quietly. Tyler was completely out of line, and actions have consequences. I'll be at your wedding regardless of what she decides to do. This was honestly the first time my dad had openly disagreed with my mom about Tyler, and I was genuinely surprised. Maybe he was finally growing a spine after 36 years of marriage and enabling behavior. Meanwhile, Tyler started posting cryptic social media updates about family betrayal and how blood means nothing anymore. My mom was commenting supportive things on all his posts, further fueling the drama and making the whole situation even more public than it already was. He even created a public playlist called Songs for Traitors that was mostly whiny emo tracks from 2006. It was honestly pathetic to watch a 26-year-old man act like a heartbroken teenager. Victoria found herself caught in the middle of all this chaos. My mom had been texting her directly, trying to guilt her into convincing me to change my mind about Tyler and the wedding invitation. When Victoria didn't respond to these manipulative messages, my mom started spreading rumors that Victoria was controlling me and deliberately turning me against my family. For now, most of my mom's family was boycotting our wedding, while my dad's side was still planning to attend. Lily reaffirmed that she was coming regardless of the drama, which meant a lot to me. We decided to downsize the wedding significantly since our guest list had been nearly cut in half overnight. The silver lining was that we saved almost $12,000 on the venue and catering costs, which we decided to put toward a much nicer honeymoon in Iceland. 2 weeks after the wedding boycott began, my mom showed up at our house unannounced again. Victoria texted me at work saying that my mom was at the door asking to talk. I told Victoria I'd be home in 20 minutes and to let her in if she felt comfortable doing so, but not to feel pressured if she didn't want to deal with it alone. When I arrived, they were sitting at our dining table, and my mom had barely touched the coffee that Victoria had politely made for her. The tension in the room was absolutely palpable. You could have cut it with a knife. My mom started with what seemed like it might be an olive branch. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I want to clear the air," she said. "Family is too important to let this drive us apart permanently." For a brief moment, I actually thought she might apologize, and we could start to work things out. Instead, she turned directly to Victoria and said, "I was hoping to catch you alone today. I think that without Marcus's influence, you'd see reason about this whole Tyler situation." Victoria calmly replied, "With all due respect, I wouldn't discuss this without Marcus present. This involves his brother and his family, and we're a team." My mom's face darkened immediately. "So you need permission to speak now? I thought you were supposed to be this independent woman." I stepped in immediately. "Mom, that's enough. If you came here to insult Victoria, you can leave right now." She completely ignored me and continued addressing Victoria directly. "You know, before you came along, our family was perfectly fine. Now suddenly Marcus thinks he's too good for us, and I wonder where he got that idea." "Before I came along," Victoria replied with impressive restraint, "Marcus was already a successful professional who'd built his own life despite, not because of, his family's support." Victoria stood up and walked toward the door. "I think you should go. We can talk when everyone's calmer and more rational." That's when my mom completely lost her mind. As Victoria was walking toward the door, my mom grabbed her by the hair and yanked her backward violently. Victoria stumbled and fell to the floor, and my mom was on top of her within seconds, screaming incoherently and trying to scratch her face with her fingernails. I pulled my mom off of Victoria and physically removed her from our house while she continued to struggle and scream. She kept pounding on our front door for nearly 10 minutes before finally leaving the property. Victoria was shaken, but thankfully not seriously hurt. She had some scratches on her arms, a bruised shoulder, and a small patch of hair that had been pulled out, but nothing that required medical attention. I immediately called my dad and Lily to tell them what had happened. My dad was shocked, but still tried to make excuses for her behavior. "Your mother's been under a lot of stress lately," he said weakly. "So have I," I replied. "Somehow I've managed not to assault anyone over it." Lily, who's seen plenty of domestic violence cases as an emergency room nurse, came over immediately to check on Victoria and assess her injuries. She strongly encouraged us to file a police report about the incident. "This isn't normal family conflict," she insisted. "This is assault, plain and simple. You need to document this in case things escalate further." Victoria was initially reluctant to involve the police, but she agreed to file a report after we explained why having an official record might be important if my mother's behavior continued to escalate. The responding officers explained that even without Victoria pressing charges, the case could still be pursued based on the evidence and witness statements. They also suggested that we consider getting a restraining order against my mother. One of the officers pulled me aside when Victoria was giving her statement. "Look, I deal with family disputes all the time, he said. This isn't normal heated argument territory. Your mother crossed a serious line here. He handed me a business card for a family law attorney who specialized in restraining orders in domestic violence cases. Throughout all of this chaos, Tyler was surprisingly absent from the drama. I texted him to let him know what had happened with our mom attacking Victoria, and his only response was, "Shit, that's messed up, sorry." There was no defense of our mom's actions, no attempt to shift blame or make excuses, just a simple acknowledgement that she had crossed a serious line. It was honestly the most reasonable response I'd gotten from anyone in my family in months. I called Connor after everything went down, and he drove over immediately with food from our favorite burger joint. He listened to the whole story without interrupting, and after I finished, he just shook his head in disbelief. "Dude, I've been telling you for 16 years that your mom's completely nuts," he said. "Maybe now you'll actually believe me." Connor helped me draft a no-contact email to my mother. The email was short and to the point. "After your physical attack on Victoria, I'm cutting all contact with you. Do not come to our home. Do not contact us by phone, email, or through third parties. Any future communication will be through our attorney. This is non-negotiable." I blocked my mom on every platform and social media account, and I told my dad that I wouldn't be speaking to her again until she got professional help and offered a genuine apology to Victoria. We also started seriously discussing moving out of state after our wedding. Victoria had been offered a position at her company's Tampa office, and since my job was completely remote anyway, a fresh start 650 miles away from this toxic family environment sounded pretty damn good to both of us. The next day, Victoria and I went to the courthouse and filed for a temporary restraining order against my mother. The judge granted it immediately, based on the police report and the photos of Victoria's injuries. My mother was now legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of us or our home for the next 90 days, with the possibility of extension if needed. What I haven't mentioned yet is the financial aspect of all this family drama, which makes the whole situation even more infuriating. 5 years ago, my grandfather passed away and left a substantial inheritance to be split among his 3 grandchildren, me, Tyler, and Lily. My parents were named as trustees of the inheritance until we either turned 30 or got married, whichever came first. My grandfather was a shrewd businessman who had built a chain of hardware stores across the Midwest. He sold his business for 8 figures a few years before he died, and each of us grandkids was supposed to receive about $420,000, plus proceeds from some investment properties he owned. The problem was, I never saw much of that money. Whenever I asked about it, my parents had excuses about why it couldn't be accessed, or they claimed that most of it had gone to family expenses and emergencies. Lily had the exact same experience with trying to access her inheritance money. After the assault incident, I started looking more closely at the trust situation and our legal rights. I requested bank statements and transaction records, which my parents were legally required to provide as trustees of the estate. What I found was absolutely infuriating, but honestly not that surprising given everything else. They had been systematically using the trust funds, primarily my share and Lily's, to support Tyler's lifestyle and his failed business ventures. His apartment rent of $2,100 monthly was being paid directly from trust money. His car, a $38,000 SUV, had been bought outright with trust funds. His failed food truck business that cost $75,000? That came from the trust as well. Even his custom gaming PC that cost $4,800 was purchased with our grandfather's money. Meanwhile, I had received exactly $13,000 over 5 years for education expenses, and Lily had gotten $11,000 from a trust that should have provided each of us with nearly $500,000. The paper trail was absolutely damning. They had set up automatic transfers from the trust account directly to Tyler's personal checking account, $3,600 monthly for living expenses. There were regular payments to his credit cards, his car insurance, his cell phone bill, his streaming subscriptions, and even his dating app premium memberships. Every aspect of Tyler's adult life was being subsidized by money that was supposed to be split equally among the 3 of us. I consulted with an attorney who specialized in estate law, and he confirmed what I already suspected. My parents had breached their fiduciary duty as trustees by clearly favoring one beneficiary over the others and using trust funds for purposes that were never intended by my grandfather's will. With Lily's full support, I filed a civil lawsuit against my parents for breach of fiduciary duty, misappropriation of funds, and violation of trust terms. The documentation was absolutely irrefutable. bank transfers, credit card statements, rental agreements, all showing exactly where our inheritance money had gone over the past 5 years. When the lawsuit papers were served, all hell broke loose. My dad called in a panic, his voice shaking. "Marcus, we need to talk about this. There's been a misunderstanding." "Bank records are pretty clear, Dad," I replied calmly. "No misunderstanding here." My mom suddenly got on the line, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Sweetheart, we always intended to repay that money. We were just helping your brother through a rough patch." "A 5-year rough patch?" I asked. "Besides, it wasn't your money to lend in the first place. It was specifically left to us by Grandpa, and you were supposed to be protecting it, not spending it." The civil lawsuit proved to be like dropping a tactical nuclear weapon on my family's financial situation. My lawyer was a former prosecutor who specialized in financial crimes, and he treated our case like a personal crusade. He uncovered that my parents had not only misappropriated our inheritance funds, but had also doctored some of the annual trust reports they were legally required to file with the court. The lawsuit hit my parents incredibly hard financially. Their assets were temporarily frozen while the case proceeded through the legal system, which meant they couldn't continue supporting Tyler's lifestyle. Their credit score tanked once the court case became part of the public record. My dad, who had been planning to retire next year, had to shelve those plans indefinitely. My mom had to go back to work as a receptionist at a dentist's office, which she considered beneath her social status. They had to withdraw from their country club because they couldn't afford the membership fees anymore. The entire situation became quietly known within their social circle, and while nobody said anything directly to their faces, they stopped getting invited to the fancy dinner parties they used to brag about attending. It turns out that embezzling from your own children doesn't make you particularly popular with other golf club parents. Tyler's rent came due, and for the first time in his adult life, there was no automatic payment from the trust fund to cover it. His car payment was late. His credit cards were maxed out, and there was no parent-funded bailout coming. Tyler couldn't qualify for new credit cards or loans because his existing debt was too high, and he had absolutely no income history to speak of. His electricity got shut off for 4 days in the middle of winter because he couldn't pay the bill. The reality of actual financial responsibility was hitting him like a freight train. A week into this financial drought, Tyler called me with desperation clear in his voice. "Look, man, I know we've had our differences, but I'm in a serious bind here. Could you loan me some cash until this whole legal thing blows over? I promise I'll pay you back." "Sorry, no," I replied matter-of-factly. "My finances are tied up in legal fees trying to recover what was stolen from me and Lily." "Come on, I'm about to be evicted from my apartment." "Sounds like a problem you should solve yourself," I told him. "Target's hiring, I hear." The silence on the other end was absolutely deafening before he hung up on me. A month after the lawsuit was filed, Victoria and I had our smaller, more intimate wedding with 45 guests instead of the originally planned 180. My dad attended by himself and was respectful throughout the entire event. Lily was there with her boyfriend, and they both seemed genuinely happy for us. Tyler and my mom were nowhere to be seen, which was exactly as we had planned it. Connor was my best man and managed to keep things light despite everything that had happened. His toast included a line about how he'd never seen a man dodge so many bullets from his own family and still come out ahead. Everyone who knew the full situation laughed harder than they probably should have, but it felt good to find some humor in the chaos. The court case was settled before it went to trial. My parents agreed to a structured repayment plan that wouldn't leave them completely homeless, but would require them to sell their vacation property and downsize their lifestyle significantly. Their lake house in northern Ohio sold for less than they had originally paid for it, which was a bitter pill for them to swallow. They had to move from their 3,800 square foot house into a 1,100 square foot condo in a neighborhood they used to openly mock. My dad's prized boat was one of the first things they had to sell to make the initial settlement payments. The remaining trust funds were placed under the control of a neutral third-party trustee with strict distribution guidelines to prevent any future misappropriation. According to the new arrangement, I would receive my full inheritance share immediately since I was over 27 and married, which met the original terms of my grandfather's will. Lily would get her share when she turned 27 in a few years. Tyler's portion would remain in the trust until he either turned 30 or showed proof of legitimate employment for at least 14 consecutive months. No more blank checks for failed business ventures. Tyler was absolutely furious when he found out he wouldn't have immediate access to his inheritance money. "That money is rightfully mine," he texted me angrily. "1/3 of it is," I replied. "And you'll get it according to the original terms of Grandpa's will, For education, legitimate business plans with proper oversight, or when you turn 30. No more blank checks. Once the judge approved the settlement, my share was released immediately. It was honestly surreal to see that much money in my bank account. $367,000 after legal fees and tax considerations. Lily would get about the same amount when she turned 27. The remainder of the trust, including Tyler's portion, was worth approximately $415,000, with some of that earmarked for repaying what my parents had already spent improperly. The first thing I did with the money was pay off our mortgage completely. The second was to fund a proper honeymoon for Victoria and me. 2 weeks in Iceland with all expenses paid and first-class flights. The third was to establish my own investment portfolio, something I knew my grandfather would have approved of. I didn't mention any of this to Tyler. As far as he knew, everything was still tied up in legal proceedings. I wanted to let him sweat a little longer and hopefully learn some actual life lessons. It's been 7 months since the lawsuit was settled, and we relocated to Tampa as we had planned. Victoria is absolutely thriving in her new position at her company's Florida office, and I've been promoted to lead security architect at my company. We bought a beautiful house in a nice suburb and are finally enjoying some genuine peace and quiet after years of family drama. Our new place is everything we wanted. 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, and a backyard big enough for a dog. We adopted a German Shepherd mix from the local shelter and named him Rocket. He's smart as hell and already knows a dozen commands. Victoria jokes that he listens better than any of my family members ever did, and she's honestly not wrong about that. My parents have been sending emails and texts almost daily, alternating between apologies, updates on their progress with Tyler, and not-so-subtle hints that they'd love to visit Tampa sometime. I respond occasionally, but maintain very firm boundaries about what kind of contact I'm willing to have. We had to renew the restraining order once before our move, but we didn't bother since we're now living in a different state entirely. My dad calls about once a month, usually to update me that their finances are tight but manageable, and to tell me about his therapy progress, which he says is slow but steady. He's apparently learning to recognize his enabling patterns and working on setting actual boundaries with my mom and Tyler. The most surprising development has been Tyler himself. With his financial safety net completely gone, he finally got a job at a local tech store. According to Lily, who still talks to him occasionally, he's actually sticking with it this time. He's working regular hours and earning his own money for the first time in his adult life, and it seems to be changing his perspective on things. Last month, he sent me an email that completely caught me off guard. Been thinking about everything that happened. That proposal bullshit was seriously messed up, and I see that now. It wasn't even really about Victoria. I was just jealous that you had your life together while I was a complete mess. Mom and Dad made it way too easy for me to be a screw-up, and I took advantage of that. That's on me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that things look different when you're not living in fantasy land. Working actual hours for actual paychecks has been pretty eye-opening. Tell Victoria, I'm sorry for being such a dick. You guys didn't deserve any of that. I didn't respond immediately because I needed time to process what he'd written. After discussing it with Victoria, I sent a brief reply. Thanks for the apology. It means something. Good luck with the job. Last week, I received a package from my hometown that really surprised me. Inside was a check for $450 with a simple note that read, "First installment on what I owe you. Not much, but it's a start. T." The amount was honestly laughable compared to what had been taken from my trust fund over the years, but the gesture itself wasn't lost on me. This was the first time in Tyler's entire life that he had actually taken responsibility for anything or tried to make amends for his actions. My mom still doesn't get it, though. Her latest email included the line, "I don't understand why you're still punishing us when Tyler has clearly moved on." She doesn't realize that this was never about punishment. It was about accountability and consequences. She continues sending passive-aggressive emails on a regular basis. Last month, she sent me a particularly long email about how everyone makes mistakes and how real families forgive each other and move past their problems. I forwarded it to Connor, who replied with a single GIF of a man playing the world's smallest violin. Sometimes his sarcasm is exactly what I need. My dad seems to be slowly coming around to reality. He started therapy several months ago and recently sent me an email that actually acknowledged his role in enabling Tyler and neglecting me and Lily over the years. "I was a coward," he wrote. "It was easier to give in to your mother and Tyler than to stand up for what was right. I failed you as a father, and I'm trying to be better now." Lily visits us in Tampa every few months, and it's been wonderful having that connection with her again. She's engaged now to a pediatric surgeon she met at the hospital, and they're planning a destination wedding in Hawaii next year. She's invited Tyler to the wedding, but not our parents. Her choice, and I completely respect that decision. She and her fiancé are actually looking at houses near us in Tampa. The idea of having my sister close by again feels like getting back something I lost years ago. We've always understood each other and supported each other through the family chaos. The inheritance from my grandfather has completely changed our financial landscape. Victoria and I have set up college funds for our future children and invested in vacation property in the North Carolina mountains. We're careful with the money, no luxury cars or designer clothes, but it's a tremendous relief to have that financial cushion and security. As for Victoria and me, we're doing better than we ever have. The distance from my family drama has been incredibly healing for both of us, and we're talking about starting a family soon. We want to do it on our terms in our peaceful new life, without any of the toxic dynamics that defined my childhood. Connor comes down to visit about once a month since he got a job that requires him to travel to the southeast regularly. He always makes time to crash at our place, and he and Victoria get along great, mainly because they both enjoy giving me shit about various things. Last time he was over, he looked around our new house, nodded approvingly, and said, "You know what the best part of this place is? It's too far for your mom to drop by unannounced." He's absolutely not wrong about that. Sometimes I think about how that completely insane proposal at Tyler's apartment set off this entire chain of events that ultimately led to everyone in my family facing reality for the first time in years. My mom lost her control over the family dynamics. My dad finally found his spine after decades of enabling. Tyler got his first real dose of adult life and actual consequences. And I finally stopped seeking approval from people who were never going to give it freely or fairly. It wasn't the path I expected my life to take, but I'm finally free of all the bullshit that defined my family relationships for so many years. Victoria and I have built something real and healthy together, away from all the manipulation and favoritism that poisoned my childhood home. Looking back, I can see that Tyler's ridiculous proposal wasn't really about Victoria at all. It was the desperate act of someone who had never learned to handle not getting what he wanted. For 26 years, he'd been handed everything without having to work for it or face consequences when things went wrong. When he finally encountered a situation where his usual tactics didn't work, he completely lost his mind. The financial aspect of the whole situation still makes me angry when I think about it too much. My parents literally stole from Lily and me to fund Tyler's lifestyle for years, and they convinced themselves it was justified because he needed more help than we did. What he actually needed was to learn how to be a functional adult, but that would have required them to stop enabling his behavior. I'm genuinely proud of the life Victoria and I have built together. We have our dream house, our dog Rocket, meaningful careers, and most importantly, we have peace. No more dramatic phone calls, no more showing up unannounced, no more walking on eggshells around fragile egos and manufactured crises. The inheritance money has given us security and options we never would have had otherwise. But the real victory is the distance, both physical and emotional, from people who spent years making me feel like I was never quite good enough, while simultaneously expecting me to fix their problems and fund their mistakes. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my family. Maybe Tyler will continue growing up and will eventually have some kind of normal relationship. Maybe my dad will keep working on himself and we can rebuild something healthy. As for my mom, I honestly don't see that changing anytime soon, and I'm okay with that. What I do know is that Victoria and I are building our own family now, with our own values and boundaries. Our kids won't grow up watching one sibling get everything while the others are expected to be grateful for scraps. They won't have to work summer jobs to afford their first car while their sibling gets handed a new one. They'll know that love isn't conditional on being the favorite, and that actions have consequences regardless of who you are. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is recognize that you can't fix other people, and you don't have to keep setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. I'm finally learning that lesson, and it feels pretty damn good.